We're almost in the second calendar year of the Switch 2, and so far it's still missing that generational game. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. So what is a generational game? It's a game that you really only get maybe once or twice in a generation. A game just so great and so innovative that people will be talking about it for generations, that people will be talking about it for decades to come. Think like a Super Mario Bros, Super Metroid, Ocarina of Time, Smash Bros Melee, games like that weren't just incredibly well received critically, but also really set the standards for their genres. For the Switch, we just happened to get 2 generational games in the first year. Breath of the Wild is games of all time, and it has influenced a lot of games since. It also does help that it is one of Nintendo's biggest series, and same with Mario Odyssey, basically the Mario version of Breath of the Wild, if that makes sense. Now, we've gotten quite a few quality games and quite a few great games for the Switch too. Mario Kart World is a good game in my opinion. It sold very well. It's going to be played for a long time just because it's a Mario Kart game. Kirby Air Riders is fun. Metroid Prime 4, it's more of a Switch game. I think it's a fun game. Donkey Kong Bonanza right now is the closest thing I think we have to a generational game on the Switch 2, but it's far from perfect. It's a very fun game, but I don't think it's on the same level as like a Mario Odyssey or even like the Mario Galaxy games, which I think 2 of the best games of all time. Like that was the Wii's generational games, along with some others. Well, I don't think a generational game necessarily has to be a huge critical success. I think that definitely does help it. And right now it doesn't seem like the Switch 2 has any of those coming out soon. Like we're getting Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, which is going to be a very fun game, hopefully. But I highly doubt it's going to be a game that will be constantly just talked about and compared in another 30 years. There's a new Fire Emblem game, which I know the series is very popular, but I don't really know if I'd call that something that's going to be a generational game or anything like that. Obviously the heavy hitters are going to be like Mario and Zelda. Those are 2 that are more often than not going to be the biggest games of the generation. It's been Pokemon for handheld titles before, but Pokemon has definitely fallen off critically in the past decade or so. For RPGs, I know a lot of people like the Xenoblade games. I'm not really too big into that series, so I don't know which ones you may say are the best. Or maybe it could be something completely new. Like if we take a look at PlayStation, for example, I think this generation has definitely been the weakest. But if we go back to the PS4, there are some really great games for that. Like there was Spider-Man on the PS4, which is some of the most fun I've ever had playing a video game. There was Uncharted 4, which I don't know if I'd call a full generational game, but it's definitely a great game. Going back to the PS3, The Last of Us, one of the best games of all time in my opinion. Something like that, a game that just comes out and just has a certain aura about it, if you want to use that word. And these are the types of games that can make or break a console. Like if there's a game that comes out that people absolutely need to get, that can sell consoles. Like people bought the Switch for Breath of the Wild, and yes, it was on the Wii U, but no one really had a Wii U. People wanted to play Breath of the Wild on the Switch. If someone wasn't a Zelda fan, alright, they got the Switch for Mario Odyssey. If someone wasn't a fan of that, they got it for Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like we live in an age now where consoles are starting to become a little obsolete. Like for the Xbox, this might even be its last generation because no one is really buying it anymore. There's really no reason to have an Xbox unless you literally just like the controller and you just like the UI or you just are a huge Xbox fan. There's no console exclusives anymore. There's no exclusives on the Xbox anymore. All these games you can play on PC. Same with PlayStation. PlayStation has very few real exclusives now. Like most of these are on Steam now, they're on PC. And if you have a good PC, there's little reason to get this unless you just prefer using a console. But for Nintendo, they're the one console company left that still prides themselves on making exclusive games. Yes, there's emulation, but if you want to play games officially, you can only play Nintendo games on Nintendo systems. There's no PC ports of these, nothing. Like you have to buy a Switch or Switch 2 to play these games. So if someone wants to play these games, if someone sees a game they want to play from Nintendo, they're gonna have to get the console or emulate it. But once again, that's an entirely different topic. And I think we're really gonna start to see more of a shift towards hybrid systems like we've been seeing in the past couple years especially. We got the Steam Deck a few years ago, we got the Rogue Ally. Sony is reportedly making a PlayStation 6 hybrid system, so it's only going to get more competitive. Like Nintendo really broke into this space. They use what's called the Blue Ocean strategy, which is taking a space that exists but then fully changing it up to make its own thing. Like obviously video game consoles have existed for a long time before the Switch, and Nintendo didn't invent that, but what they did was reinvent it. They found an area within the console ecosystem that just didn't exist yet, which was hybrid systems, which yes, it did exist. Like there have been hybrid consoles before that, even Nintendo has done things like it, but it was not mainstream. Nintendo made it mainstream and really changed the gaming landscape, and something that helped it was Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild being a launch game, it definitely got a lot of people to play it. Remember when the Switch came out and more copies of Breath of the Wild were sold than the actual Switch? I feel like the Switch 2 needs something like that within like a year or so, because while I'm happy with my Switch 2 purchase, I want there to be a game that comes out and just puts no doubt in my mind that it was a great purchase. Whether it's a 3D Mario, a new Zelda, a new IP, a new Smash game, a game that will basically be timeless. Like that's what I think we need from Nintendo. There's been some questionable news about the Switch 2. I know there was less sales than were expected in November, I believe, and so far in December. I could be wrong. And Nintendo has definitely found themselves to be in a lot of controversy recently, so it's really as good a time as any. And once again, I think I mentioned this before, but it's not easy. I'm not expecting Nintendo to just make a game like this every year, because then that takes away from what a generational game is. But I hope they find something like go back to the GameCube era. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, still talked about today. Metroid Prime, still talked about today. Both games got new versions on the Switch as well, and that's because people still remember how great these games are. If they weren't these fantastic all-time games, there's a good chance Nintendo just doesn't remake them or remaster them. Look at Ocarina of Time, something like that. Or look at Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64. Both games that do not look good today. They look like very old games. They're nearly 30 years old. They look very outdated, but you can still pick them up and play them and be the same game they were all the way back then when they were still great. And I think objectively speaking, I don't care what your favorite Zelda game is, Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time are the two generational Zelda games. Like, those are the two biggest Zelda games in terms of impact. You could argue A Link to the Past. I think for the series itself, you can maybe say A Link to the Past. You could say the original Zelda for starting the series, but I think if we look 50 years into the future, Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild will probably be the two games that are still remembered most by most people, unless just another game comes out in that time. Or I should say, for games that are actually out now in 50 years. For Mario, I think the original Super Mario Bros., just because of its overall impact on gaming. But if we want to talk about more in-depth games, like Super Mario 64 and Mario Galaxy, I would say are those big two for Mario. Odyssey, you could argue. And something else I wanted to talk about is that generational games don't have to be by first-party developers. Like, if we look at Red Dead 2, GTA 5, Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 1, any of those three basically. Metal Gear Solid, Half-Life, which is a PC game, Skyrim, Minecraft, these are all games that will go down in history as all-time great games. So I don't know, maybe a developer makes a game like this for the Switch 2, but unless it's exclusive, it's not going to really convince people to actually get the Switch 2. Right now, if you're buying the Switch 2, it's because you're either a huge Nintendo fan or you just had money to get a Switch 2, because there's not going to be too many casual fans getting the Switch 2, I feel like, unless they really aren't concerned about the price. Because even if you want this hybrid type of gameplay where you can bring it on the go and get home console quality graphics, you're probably getting a Steam Deck. Like a Steam Deck, you could pretty much play anything on. I believe it's more powerful than a Switch 2. The price is comparable. So unlike with the original Switch, where that was the whole hype behind it because there was nothing else like it on the market, the Switch 2 has competition and it really needs to differentiate itself. And yes, the Switch 2 has sold very well so far because there just are so many Nintendo fans that will buy anything, and pretty much myself, like I'm included in this group where I'm just a huge Nintendo fan. I'm gonna buy their new systems, but sales do slow down if the games just can't keep up with it, especially with this economy where people really need to think extra about their purchases. So I know I've ranted a lot in this video, but my point is just, I think a generational Nintendo title coming out next year can do a ton for the system and do a ton for Nintendo as a brand, and I have no doubt that there will be. I have no doubt that there'll be a great Mario or Zelda or an original or any Nintendo series, like a game that will go down as like the Switch 2 game. But right now we just haven't gotten that, and I know some people are going to comment saying it's Bonanza, and like I try to look at this objectively, because if I was looking at it subjectively, I'd say like Super Paper Mario is one of those games, but it's not, because impact is definitely a big part of it. Like if you're just taking out your own personal emotions on games, Bonanza is not going to be a game that's talked about in the same light as a Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. Like it's probably going to be a game that's remembered. It's a very good game. In fact, it's a great game, but I think the Nintendo Switch 2 needs a lot more. So let me know in the comments what you want to see, what your favorite games on every Nintendo console have been, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching Game Domain, and I'll see you next time.